Despite my first experiences with the Final Fantasy series being on the Super Nintendo with Final Fantasy IV and Final Fantasy VI, I've always associated the series with the PlayStation brand. There hasn't been a main numbered Final Fantasy on a Nintendo platform since Final Fantasy VI, and despite the series going multi-platform these days, the Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles series has remained a Nintendo platform exclusive. Produced by Akitoshi Kawazu, head of the Saga series and one of the original Final Fantasy creators, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles was Square Enix's contribution to Nintendo's push for Game Boy Advance to GameCube connectivity. The title was a 4-player hack-and-slash dungeon-crawling adventure, enjoyable to those who could afford all the required components, a Game Boy Advance and a GameCube link cable for each player. The Game Boy Advance let players manage their own inventories on the fly without disrupting each other's gameplay experience. Crystal Chronicles went on to sell over 1 million units worldwide, a smaller figure compared to the main Final Fantasy series, but impressive considering the steep barrier to entry. The series continued forward with titles on the Nintendo DS that followed the foundation the original had set. Square Enix announced during E3 2005 that the next home console entry was slated for Nintendo's then recently announced Revolution system, later to be named the Wii. The following E3, a teaser trailer was shown with the familiar style for the series. However, Akitoshi Kawazu decided to take the franchise in a new direction. Years before, he had taken notice of the popular Grand Theft Auto series. Wanting to emulate Grand Theft Auto's sense of freedom in a Final Fantasy world, he started producing the Wii title in a drastically different direction from Crystal Chronicles' roots. After 3 years of development, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles The Crystal Bearers saw release in December of 2009. The Super Deformed multiplayer action franchise had been transformed into a single-player action-adventure title with a visual style more akin to the main Final Fantasy series. The Crystal Bearers is practically unrecognizable from the earlier entries, with the exception of the familiar tribes, the Clavat, Selkie, Lilites, and the Ukes, along with the racial conflicts between them. Even the Renaissance-themed score in the original has become a hodgepodge of genres, delving into rock, western, and even swing. Instead of crafting their own characters, players take control of Lael, an already well-worn work for hire. Unlike many other young male protagonists in Square Enix's other titles, Lael's skills are already fully developed to take on the job, giving him a confident and cocky attitude.
Leave it to me. Lael! Hey, Lael! Respond! Lael! Wahoo! Crystal Bearer!
The Crystal Bearers begins with an adrenaline rush as you enter a skydive using a massive chain gun to defend an airship. Shortly after, you have to maneuver the falling airship through a tight canyon while getting an ear full of screams.
No! Please! Let me off!
The Indiana Jones adventure flavor created during this scene, with fast action and witty dialogue, is the epitome of what Crystal Bearers attempts to achieve from a cinematic perspective. The cutscenes themselves take a more action approach, with fight choreography comparable to the Final Fantasy Advent Children movie, albeit a bit more tame. But these segments are inconsistent. Few sequences fully deliver on the experience that the first 10 minutes of the game demonstrates, and poor delivery on the voice actor's part, especially Lael, lessens the value of the dialogue.
Hey, this chest is empty.
That girl. She can sure cause trouble.
Outside of these linear, cinematic sequences, the rest of the game focuses on open-ended content. The level-based world of the original Crystal Chronicles is replaced with an open world. The areas are small enough to keep the player on track, but rewards those who probe the environment for secret areas or hidden treasure chests. The Crystal Bears drastically changes the combat style from the original Crystal Chronicles hack-and-slash gameplay. Instead of the standard attacks and skills you get out of a typical RPG, Layla has a single power, the ability to control gravity. This skill flings open the door for all those fun Wiimote waggling mechanics. He can flip, trip, spin, and even throw enemies at will. You can also throw objects at enemies, or even throw enemies at other enemies. No significant new skills or moves can be learned throughout the adventure, and that can leave the player feeling limited at times. However, using these skills in combination with the environment while exploring and combating foes opens the can of wonders hidden inside of the Crystal Bears. Experimentation with character interactions is the title's defining element. Weird and bizarre happenings are frequent occurrences. It's chaotic, which might come from the title trying to emulate the nature of Grand Theft Auto in a Final Fantasy friendly way. You could be busy doing some other objective and then a cow falls over and starts shooting laser milk out of its udders. There are other actions that have actual benefits, like helping citizens in need, but most of them are just for entertainment or unlocking achievements. This cause and effect mechanic also plays into the combat. For example, enemy behavior can be altered based on your actions. Throwing a skeleton will cause wolves to chase and attack it while befriending the player. Smashing two beetles together can create a bowling ball to roll at other enemies. You can also summon special creatures like throwing two skeletons at each other to create one single stronger skeleton. This helps add variety to balance out Layla's limited moveset, but the title in a way discourages trying out these techniques. Crystal Bear runs off somewhat of a day, night, or good evil time system. During the normal phases, there are no foes and the player is free to explore as they please. On the flip side, the other phase of time has enemies roaming the field. Each of the phases has a time limit. Ridding an area of enemies before the phase switches rewards the player with health upgrades and other items. Instead of experimenting, it's easier to flip enemies over like pancakes until their health dwindles down. It becomes a common battle tactic and gets a bit old. Like many third-party Wii titles of its time, Crystal Bears has a lot of interesting ideas behind it, but lacks the polish to pull the experience together. By late 2009, the idea that the Wii had an untapped third-party potential was dying off. If it wasn't a dancing game or a Nintendo franchise, it wasn't selling. Square Enix probably already understood that. The title was released on December 26th, missing the holiday rush, and all accounts point to poor sales. The series has since gone dark, and with the Wii U struggling in the home console market right now, it seems unlikely that we'll be getting a new home console entry, exclusive to Nintendo platform at least, anytime soon. It may not have been the Crystal Chronicles title that fans were looking for, but I haven't played something that offers a world quite like what the Crystal Bears has to offer.
This is cool.
I am the sexiest gamer in the world. Oh.